Good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. We would like to introduce to you four of my games that I've played and what we can learn from the games, including themes, the thought process, tactics, and all phases of the game. Now let's get started with the first game. Right. This is a game I played against another player this month. The important thing is not necessarily if I won or lost, but the important thing is what uh, how well I played in the game, and what I learned from it. So let's get into it. Start with the customary d4, plays d5, c4, and c4, of course, is your queen's gambit. The idea is he takes, you offer to temporarily give him a side pawn, which is the first three. So if you look at the first three files, A, B, and C, or E, so the side file would be the first three or last three. In this case, we're going to play into the center, and we're going to play the first. So this would be the C pawn. We're basically offering up a wing pawn. I mean, a side, not wing pawn, but side pawn for a center pawn. And the idea is that we would get better central control and better development because after, for example, like in the game, plays pawn takes pawn, we can follow up with bringing out another piece, and now we're up in development by one piece, and that pawn on c4 cannot be guarded because if he plays b5 now, for example, you can just take. So, and there is no, I mean, yes, he can play, for example, bishop e6, but it's not going to be so easy to hold that position. I believe I can play e4 now with the idea of d5. So after knight f6, I play d5 now, and we're hitting the bishop has to come back. Suppose it comes back to attack the knight, we just play knight c3. Here, the e4 pawn is guarded, and of course d5 is guarded by the pawn. So, that's the idea. Now, I'm going to play, so b5 certainly would be quite bad. So yeah, knight after knight c3, I would say white is, although black has two pieces out and only has one piece out, I have better central control, which is the point of bringing pieces out. We need to bring out our players, our actors in the game, and we want to have central control where we have more mobility and more possibilities to play on either side of the board, including the center. Okay, so let's do that. Right, so he plays knight f6 and knight f3. Notice we're not in a hurry to try to play e3 or e4. Now, the other thing you have to consider is this bishop coming to g4. The idea is you remove the defender to try to attack the d pawn. Either win it outright with queen takes, which you can immediately do. A lot of times white will just simply play e3, defending the pawn, recapture the pawn castle, and then play queen e2, rook d1, and then eventually push. First, we want to get our bishop out, preferably take the pawn, and then just play everything step by step. So here he plays knight to c6, and knight c6 is a little premature because although it hits the pawn a second time, you're not getting more play with your pawns. You want to have two pawns in the center. Knight c6 is premature because you should play c5, then knight c6. So I play simply e3. He plays bishop f5. Now here it's a little premature. Again, bishop doesn't have to go to f5. Technically it could, but it's a little misplaced because it can be attacked with knight h4. Second of all, your priority is to get your development to castle. Okay, so and it already has scope, which means when the pawn moves, it will give it scope as it can move. Now with e6 instead of bishop f5 now, and this will block in the bishop temporarily, but allow the king bishop, as in the bishop on the king side, to come out and castle, and then later have a pawn break of e5, which is the goal. Which you could coordinate it after e6, bishop e7, castle, bishop g4, then play e5. Okay, but the problem is now you've got d5 at some point, dislodging the knight, and losing time. And if I open up the engine, I can show you. Let's run the engine, and we can see that it is not considered correct. After bishop f5, it is considered misplaced. At least a question mark, if not if not just a regular mistake, it's a significant mistake. So better to play like you could play e5. No, that's true. I would play d5. Yeah, e4, pawn takes, right? Exchange queens, knight will take, pawn will take, g will take, takes with the pawn, and then I take this pawn. Okay, so e5 is possible. The engine actually likes d5 or e4 more, so e4, gotta be careful with e4 that he does. Yeah, he plays bishop g4. Remove the guard on d4, so he has to play d5 or bishop e3. Problem with bishop e3 is he's going to take anyway, and if you take back with the queen, he'll have this attack twice, so probably d5 is better. He also suggests bishop takes c4, so let's show what could happen. Bishop takes c4, bishop takes 3. Then you have to play g takes f, otherwise you lose this pawn. Now this is a plus and a minus. The minus is that we've opened up the king side, but the plus is that we'll have a half-open file. If he ever casts his king side, we're going to finish our development with bishop e3, move the queen either to c2, d2, or even e2. Castle queen side, and then start attacking the king side. Okay. So after e5 now, oops, not e6, e5, which would be the whole point of playing on c6, we just play d5, and after knight to d4, we're just going to attack it. Actually, no, he's on this twice. Okay, rook g1 now. The idea is we don't want to open up the king. It was a concession for us to play g takes f, but it is possible to play that way, so we play rook g1. Prevents him from moving the bishop out, so that's a plus and a minus. Then he plays knight d7. He wants to play queen h4. And knight b5 now. So if he plays queen h4, we've got the fork on c7, hitting the king and the rook. And also the knight hit twice. Okay, which will lead to a win of a pawn. Then we just finish our development. Bishop b3, we can castle queenside, and then finally, if we have to play king b1 and just play regular chess, we can just double up on the g file and then just move up the board. So knight b5 would be a good move. White would be significantly better, as has better chances, and also this threat here. So, for example, reason for this would be, for example, he's hitting it twice. So if he takes, you take back with the bishop, and question the bishop with a6, bishop a4, and then g6 now. Now the problem with g6, even though it does stop me from moving the pawn that was on g7, and does let the bishop come out, is normally when you play g6 is to play bishop g7, which means h4, h5. You can't take because there would be a pin on that part. Or also, the question will be, where is the king going? Is going kingside or queenside? If he's going to the queen side, you have to think, okay, do we want to play queen e7 now? Do we want to bring the bishop to g7? And now we're going to go queenside. Well, if we go queenside, white will play bishop e3 with c1, and then attack over where there's already a half-open file. So this is not going to be great. So after even bishop g5 now, hitting the queen, you could play f6 now, bishop e7, which would be a lot more solid, f6, f6, you play bishop takes then. And after queen takes, then we're just going to take the pawn, hitting the rook and the pawn, which should be only 2 pawns. After bishop d4, you can just tuck your king over to f1, right? So he has something. Castle on the king's side, and then you just play bishop takes c5. Now we're up 2 pawns now. We can play rook c1 in the third pawn. Then if this rook gets on the 7th, we're going to put the rook over to g7. It should be a windmill because we give check, king over, and then take. Or he can take twice, but he'll give up. He'll be effectively down another pawn. So because you give up a queen, which is worth 9 points, versus a bishop and a rook worth 8. So after e3, bishop takes bishop f5, which is definitely a mistake. I play bishop takes c4, play c6. Now it's white to play here. This is where you need to pause and look at your options. So after e6, look at the position and say, okay, what do I have left to do? Okay, I have to develop, I have to castle the king. I have that bishop on d2, which doesn't have good score. And I need to connect the rooks, which means I have to move the queen out of the way. So what we do is we say, okay, what's available and what's the priority? Okay, what's the priority castle? So we're going to castle next. Okay, that's possible. Or we can play, it turns out h3 was, the engine looks as the second best move. So, you have h3 is that he can't play bishop f3, bishop g4, so you don't want him to play e5. Okay, that's the idea. Castle is also quite possible, so for example, instead of playing h3 at castle, now let's look at, so there's bishop b4, there's bishop d6, which I kind of like more, because it prepares to play the pawn break of e5 after castle. You can prepare to play e5, or if you really need to, play rook e8 after the castle and push on e5. White would continue by playing queen e2 to push get his own pawn break on e4. Bishop comes back to g6, anticipating e4, and you play e4. Now the idea now is we have a threatening fork on e5. So now black has to see how awkward this is. Bishop on d. Normally, you don't put the bishop on d6 because of this idea. Let's say black plays now e5. We're going to take the pawn. And we'll take back. We'll take back. We'll take his knight. We'll take your knight. Okay, notice we have that. But then we have f4 now tempoing the bishop. Now, it is true he has bishop d4 check. He can also take the knight. Let's say he plays bishop d4 check, king h1, and bishop takes, and you can actually castle at this point. Now, black then plays e5. And this is a lot better because you can't play the knight to e4 because you lose it. This white has a cover choice. And you can't play it to d5. So you'd have to play some move like rook e8 now, pinning the knight. And then we simply play queen f3. We're attacking the b pawn. Now we're threatening to take. Also covering the e4 and d5 squares. And white would be winning at this point. Decisive. So it's not all material, it's position that matters the most. So let's look at that. Now, alternatively, instead of bishop d4, you can play bishop takes c3. The idea would be, okay, I want to remove the guard. But then, okay, so he could win this pawn because he'd be attacked twice. So after bishop takes knight, we play pawn takes bishop. Now, here's a tricky thing. If he plays knight takes pawn now, what we do is the knight's is now going to be pinned. So we're going to play f5 now. Interfering, it's an interference. Bishop has to move. So instead of the bishop moving, play queen e7. Notice our queen is defended and so is his. What we're going to do is we're going to now take his bishop. So you can't take with that. Also, if you take with the bishop, so we have to consider both ways. take with the bishop. Then we have this good move of bishop a3. Now bishop a3 means that black cannot castle. Okay, so this is a good move. Cannot castle because you cannot move your king through check. So when you castle, basically you're moving your king 2 squares over. So it's basically you're moving 2 squares, but you cannot move through a square. So basically you're moving 2 squares at a time, and then moving the rook over on the side. But you cannot pass through check. So at this point, he could not castle. I would say after here, with white not being able to castle, this would be definitely better for me. If not, well, clearly better, considering his king was going to be kept in the center for a while. Meanwhile, my king is much safer, and I have this threat of playing bishop d3, which should be decisive, as it is. So white would be winning at this point. Now, let's go back to what I played. I played h3. Now, there isn't a big rush. I just want to control squares on the king side. And I was thinking eventually I'm going to play castle. Then, so it is interchangeable. I can play h3, then castle, then queen e2, rook d1, or queen e2, e4. Then the bishop comes out. We play our rooks on d1 and c1. So that would be the plan. So after h3, h5 now. What you want to do is stop me from playing g4, but I'm not going to do it anyway. I'm just preventing him from going to g4. So we castle now. Instead of queen, okay. So here I play queen b3. Now queen b3 was definitely something to consider because I'm hitting on the b pawn, which is unguarded. So after, for example, queen b3, if he plays, for example, knight a5, then we got simply queen a4 check. Bishop has to, the knight has to come back. Or you have to play c6. c6 will uncover the defense of the knight. And what we do is we bring our bishop back. Ooh, interesting maneuver, bishop f1. Oh, I see. The bishop was in the way. Oh, what bishop? This is the idea now is b4. Oh, right, because it's the knight is still attacking. So our idea is going to play b4 hitting the knight, effectively winning the piece. Okay. So after queen b6, stopping b4. Now we can just remaneuver, play bishop e2, castle, and then after the castle, play a3, b4. We pretty much can't stop it, very steady. And then we play bishop d2, we're bringing rooks over to d1, f to d1, a to c1. And then we're just going to play real steady, just come up and play into the queen side. So, yeah. After knight c6 now, brings the knight forward, so queen a4 check. Oh, sorry, queen b3. He does play knight a5, as it is anyway. So queen a4, knight c6. Better was c6 because now we can guard this, but and then threaten this b5 idea. So that's why you play bishop f1. But instead he played knight c6. Now knight c6, I'm going to add another attacker to this. So I play knight e5. See, I'm attacking this twice. That knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, pawn check. So you can't block with the queen because I'd win the rook with check. So you'd have to move the other knight back. Plays queen d6 now to defend the knight twice. Uneasy. It looks like this is almost a winning move. 95, just out of the opening. Queen d6 looks like it's guarding this twice, but this knight on c6 is pinned. I play bishop. I can play bishop b5 now, which is what I did. Nice. d7. Yeah, there's no real good moves. If you play a6 now, you can't take because you'll just take I will just take the rook. a6 doesn't really do anything. Simply, I'm just going to take the knight. And when he takes, for example, Obviously, you won't take with the queen because I'll take with my bishop, and after it takes back, I'll take again with my queen, forking the king and the rook. So you'll have to take with the pawn, in which case we'll take again, forking the two. And this is with check, so the king will move to d8 now. Yeah, there's no real decent moves here. You can, instead of king d8, you can actually play like knight d7. But then, of course, we're going to play bishop takes rook. This knight's going to be pinned. So knight d7. Basically, after bishop e5, it's already winning at this point for sure. Knight d7. I play knight takes now, not bishop takes, because we want to have the fork and the pin on this. I believe that is correct, right? Yes, okay, that's correct. So knight takes c6, b takes c6, bishop takes c6. Okay, so we say, okay, we're forking the rook and attacking the knight twice. The rook's going to have to move, so he moves to b8, hitting the b pawn, so that's something, sure. And then now again it is right to play. Sensing the opportunity, I played bishop takes. I think there's no need to rush this. In fact, I don't want him to be able to play bishop d3. And this trade now isn't ideal, so I think bishop takes is probably a mistake, a little bit of a mistake. It's not going anywhere anyway. Might as well play e4. We're on the bishop. Rook b4. Bishop takes because it's forced because he's hitting the queen. Now it'd be forced now. Queen takes. Queen takes. And of course still the queen's being attacked, so queen takes queen. King takes, and then we'd win the bishop. And that would definitely be winning for white as he would win a piece. So here I lost. This is a missed opportunity, but at least and also strategically it's correct because we're preventing any play of this bishop. Now after e4, he can play bishop g6. So rook b4 doesn't work. Bishop g6, a5. Actually, either way this is bad because after queen e7, I think castle. Yeah, this is probably your better move. Bishop g6, not b4. Rook b4. It looks like he's attacking the queen, but we trade twice on d7, then take the bishop. So bishop g6, e5 now. Queen e7, then we get our king out of the center with castle. Now he does have bishop d3, but now we've also prevented knight f6, knight c5. He can play queen b4, but then we play bishop takes knight check, winning a piece. So after castle, black doesn't really have it. Castle, this is just winning. What do you have for black? You just play queen d8, and I'm just going to come up the board, just open up the 7. And d5, for example, suppose he takes. We just give that up for now. We play bishop g5. Or knight d5. Knight d5, also hitting with c7. So, which is bishop c5. It's not checked because the pawn's on f2. Then we play e6, x. This is a beautiful move. e6. The idea is if he takes now, we play bishop takes. So this is check, so he has to respond to the check. King f8 now. Knight f4 hitting the pawn and the bishop. So the idea is if I take on e6, I fork the king or I win the piece. So he has to play bishop f7 to defend. Then we play knight takes e6. That's check. Bishop takes. Play bishop takes now. Okay. Then we have this idea of playing queen f4 on the king. And queen f6, then we stop queen f4. And I have simply just moved the bishop back, bishop e3. You play bishop d2, followed by bishop c3. So after, I don't know, there isn't really any good move here. a5, I guess. Bishop e2, rook takes b3. Suppose it plays queen takes now. Queen to c4, threatening mate on f7. You can now, desperado, you take this bishop, then I take his bishop with check as an intermezzo move, between move, king g8, and then finally we're going to take queen d5, play queen d5 check, pushing the king away, and at the right time he takes after king h7. We can't play bishop b4 check, his pawn takes. Now, I can take the pawn checks with combination. King goes back to g8, queen goes to d5 now, king h7, and at the right time we take. We want to limit to where the king can go, and also centralize our queen. So this is definitely okay. So what we want to do from that is we want to look for in-between moves, and we want to position the queen so we can better control what's going on in the game, and also we want to get our last piece out. So that e6 was beautiful. Also, e4 was positionally correct. So I play bishop takes d7, queen takes d7, queen takes c7, king takes d7, then e4. This isn't the best approach. It's kind of like second best. So bishop h7, bishop back, f3 now. Okay, f3 is good because we're gonna hold the pawn there and frees up the knight to move. So we'll play f3, f5, e5, bishop e4. Okay. Okay, now again it's right to play. He wants to get a piece out while trying to control the effect and influence the center. Okay, we don't have knight e4, so this f5 had some merit, but what I want to do is we have a couple of rules. Number one, we want to still use our knight and get it on c5. Second of all, we want to get our bishop out to the right square. We want to play it on d2. Well, d2, he's going to trade it, and it's going to be an awkward bishop. We're going to play it on e3. If we play on e3, he'll trade, and I'll control this b file for the time being. So we'd probably play something like king d2, trade off rooks, and we'll come in. And this will eventually be winning, but I play bishop d2 now. If we had the square on e4, it's actually pinned. Excuse me, we can't move the knight. It's pinned. So because it's pinned, we can't move the knight. We just have to break the pin. Otherwise, yes, I would deal like to play knight a4 with that knight c5. Also, knight e4 is not available even if there wasn't a pin because of the pawn would take it. So after bishop e2, he plays c5 now. The only problem with this is that we're playing on the side where the king is open. So here I play castle queenside. Not an easy decision to make at this point. Do we take the pawn? Even rook d1's idea is okay, so we could take. Idea is we want to threaten takes followed by like move the knight, move this bishop with check, this guy with check. So let's say, okay, so he suggests rook d1. What happens if he just takes the pawn now? Take the pawn on the knight. Knight will go to e2. Oh, I see. Okay, hitting the pawn. So then after d3, play bishop takes. Rook can take on the pawn. Rook takes d3 check. Or after bishop takes, can take the knight. Oops, bishop takes. Bishop takes. Ah, I cannot take the knight because it's check. Yeah, so that's why c5 is bad. d3, knight 2. So he can play bishop c5 to defend the pawn. See, it's kind of loosened. Knight takes d4, beautiful. You probably wonder, why do you play knight takes d4? because he can just take, right? Well, if he takes, guess what happens? We've got bishop c3. The bishop is now pinned because you have an uncovered attack. And then with the bishop moving to c3, we've attacked it twice, meaning we'll get the piece back. Meanwhile, we form a pawn. So after rook hd8, so we bring rook that's not in play into play. We're going to play rook takes d4 check. Notice the bishop is anchoring pawn on b2. And then play king e7. And then we can play rook to a4 now, hitting the undefended pawn on e7. Threat is to take, probably take on g7 and or h, the bishop on h7. The idea now is we want to put Bloomberg. We don't want to castle, we want to get our king towards the center. Play a move like king e2, cover the squares around, d2, d1, d3, d2, d3. Move our rook either to d1, or, yeah, we move her to d1, trade off one of the rooks, and we'll just come in. And then if he tries to defend the pawn, we play bishop d4, trade it off, and we got two passed pawns, and then the king's coming over to the queen side to a queen, both the A and or the B pawn. So rook a4 would be winning from a positional standpoint. Is so let's say rook a4. So instead of playing castle queen side, the idea is I wanted to castle and have the rook on d1. So I had the right idea, just maybe it wasn't best because you can play rook hc8, which is what the engine suggests now. Rook hc8 in that case. I can play king b1, or I can play d5. Now d5 makes sure that the c file doesn't open for the time being. You can play f4 now, letting the bishop have scope. And then we play a3 to hit the bishop. It doesn't play bishop back. That's interesting. Oh, no. Play bishop back, what happens? e2, discover attack, so we trade it, right? Bishop takes, rook takes. Okay, let's look at the material now. White has 7 pawns, black only has 4. Oh, sorry, 5. 2 pawns down, doesn't want to trade pieces. Makes sense. And after c4, we'll play pawn takes pawn, discover check, king takes, and then we double the except for d5. So after c3, we just take the knight. Also, the pawn on f4 is hanging, and he could take our pawn on pre with king takes c5. Then we have take d5 check. King goes back to f6. Knight takes f4. So we take the pawn. We're also attacking the pawn h5. This is winning for me. Let's go back to the main line. We play c takes d. Knight a4 now. The idea is we're up 2 pawns. We want to trade it. And then if the trade happens, we're going to take with the rook, not the king, obviously. And attacking this d pawn, which cannot be guarded. Obviously, also you cannot play bishop c5 because knight takes c5. He would lose the piece. So he plays rook hca, king goes to b1. Then he has a discovered check of f4, so it's something just not enough. King a1 now, bishop e7. Okay, now it's black to play here. Critical for him. Bishop c2 might be better. Bishop c2 would hit the bishop and the knight and the rook. We would play bishop takes b4. Now if bishop takes rook, knight to c5 check. It has the check, now we can take. Okay, let's see. Sorry. So king e8, then we take the bishop. Okay, then of course you can't take this bishop on b4. We'll take the pawn on e6. That's which, well, it's not a check, but we're putting the g pawn, d pawn. You can't play rook d8 because knight takes. So you can extend it forward with d3. There's no rush to take. You could play b3 or a3. a3 would just play rook b3. a3. Computer switches. b3 makes sense defending the pawn. Then we played knight d4, hitting the rook. So now you don't have rook b4, his pawn will take. Okay, we're going to come back to b8. Then you just take the pawn. A little bit advanced on how this is being played. You have to coordinate both the knight and the rook together. So this is more advanced type stuff, but we just have to think, okay, what do we have advantages? Well, we have passed pawn on the b file, we have a passed pawn on the e file. So that's 2 extra pawns plus the knight is equal to the rook. And then we have ideas of playing knight e6. So for example, after rook d8 depending, we could just continue playing b3 now. Just play solid, play king b2, king c3, and we defend both the knight and the rook, and then we have knight f5. Okay, so b3 would be a nice move. Nice move. Okay. And yes, positionally, I would say white is winning, has the chances, black is pretty much just being pushed back. So after bishop e7, bishop takes f4, oops. So after king a1, that was check, we place bishop e7. Okay. Doesn't want to trade, which I understand. Now bishop f4, win another pawn, threatening to win another pawn. So after rook to b4, which is of course what the engine says, b4, knight c3, just move the knight back because it's being attacked. Notice pawn can't take knight because it's checked, it's pinned. Bishop c2 now. Then we have rook d2 on the bishop. Now if he plays d3 now, then we do have bishop b3 hitting the pawn. You can swing the other rook over to c1, threatening to win. Yeah, so you're threatening to win this bishop on c2. So you play rook h to c1, but when rook takes bishop, you can't take back because rook check. So bishop e3, a5, rook h c1, rook c1, choosing rook c1. King e8, now getting out of the pin, and then he plays knight e4, having an outpost, controlling the d6 square for now. And this will definitely be winning for white. Just have to be careful about the pawn coming down to a3 and stuff like that, but that would be what we're looking at. Also, our threat after knight e4 is to play rook takes pawn, because after bishop takes pawn, we play rook takes rook. So we're winning a pawn, that would be the check, and then he can actually play like rook a8. So he plays rook b. This is pretty much best play rook bc4. And you say, okay, he has this covered. You play g4, you have a pawn majority, so you're going to play on that side. Then you're going to play rook f2. Notice we have, okay, so his bishop can move, that's true. Suppose the bishop moves, let's say, tries to be tricky with bishop to b3. Trade off rooks, he's going to take. And then we just take his pawn. Notice we have an escape square over on. Well, it's bishop on c1's card once. Also, we have escape square on e2. And we're hitting, so definitely winning. Bishop b3 doesn't work. This is, yeah, rook b8, let's say. Then knight d6 check. Forking, so he has to trade it off. Takes, a4. Wants to go down a3. We play bishop d2 now with the idea now of bishop to c3. King d7, attacking your pawn. I'm going to play rook to e1 out of here. You can play rook c5. You can play Oh, the idea of f5. Rook. There isn't any good move really. You can play rook c5 with any rook d5. Really isn't any good move for black and white. There's a3 here, but what do you have? You have b3 on the rook. Notice he doesn't have rook c3 or rook b3, rook b4, rook a4. So this looks aggressive with black, but doesn't really amount to much after rook d4 and rook e5. So the idea now would be to play rook g5 followed by take. So he can take the pawn. Maybe best for him to try to trade rooks, but rook d5, rook e4 now. Maybe a rook a4 and check. See, he's gonna win this pawn anyway, so it's not your concern. Let's say bishop d1 now, hitting pawn f3. Play rook f1, bishop e2. Back to rook to c1 now. Now threatening to play rook c7. Also, oh wait, was there a mistake in saying it's equal now? b8, 96, a4. Okay, now bishop d2. Okay. Rook d2 is possible too. You have to be careful about when this bishop moves. Oh, okay, yeah. Bishop b3, you take. Okay, so his bishop b3 looks like. There's a check. Gets the king. Okay, so you don't want to take immediately because if you take back with the bishop, if king takes now, you have rook takes d3 check, king 8, and then it's defended, so you can just rook takes bishop. Now there's no real good moves here, so rook d2 is the right move. Rook d2. Okay, so complicated. Plays bishop c2. Play rook takes pawn. So yeah, rook takes pawn. King 8, c3. Relocating the pieces so we'll do better squares. Bishop f5. To d1, I'm going to double up the rooks. Control d7. Bishop c5 on my rook. Rook d7. Bishop c2. Bishop. Hitting my rook. Then what we're going to do is we take a moment to check which can we move the pawn up to d2. Is there any threats coming down? The knight's in the way, both of his bishops are in the way, so we can play rook at 1, as in the first rank, to d2. Bishop f5 now. He doesn't really have any good moves. Computer suggests I can play a4. I wanted to play a3. Stop the bishop from there, and also have at some point I think a4. Rook d1 is just a4. Okay, here it's very technical, so here you can play a4, maybe the idea of knight b5. Knight d6 maybe. So king f8 now attack, defending the cheap pawn. Knight b5, okay, yeah, I see that. It's already defended by the bishop though. King g8, just a waiting move. Then we play knight d4, and the bishop on the pawn. So suppose he takes the knight, take with me. This rook here. Okay, now, when he takes now, he's threatening, he doesn't have mates, but he wants to come down. But here, we uncover defensive c1, so we take back with, simply take back with the rook. a5 now. And then we come back to d2. Notice he has some weak pawns now. What we'd like to do is we'd like to maneuver the rook up to d6, over to a6, back to a7. We have this battery on the 7th rank, which will be decisive. Problem with here is black's running out of decent moves. So we're going to continue where our strengths are. We're threatening to take life on a7. So we could take, even come back to b3, move the rook up, so bishop d2 is winning. Simply because we've got weakness on the queen side and we have a weakness on the king side. Also, the threat of the rook that's on e4 to go to d6 to a6 over to a7. Once it gets to a7, it's going to be over. You can't play rook b7 because I'll take. You can't play rook c7, I'll take. So, yeah. a3, g8. That's slightly, gives me the b4 square, lets the king come out. I play on a good square of e4. Okay, now I'm hitting the knight on, hitting the bishop on c5, even though it's defended. Goes back to b6. Oh yeah, I probably should go back to e6. He's on e7, thinking to block this. But, oh, yeah, okay, I can take on a7. I could have took on a7, that's true, and then played rook on d to d7. Could have just took, that's true. Idea double on the d5. Horizontally double. Give check, doesn't matter, just the a2 doesn't do anything. Bishop takes on4, pawn takes on4. To c4 on this pawn. To f2 with a discovery happening. Looks like the idea is after rook takes, bishop g5, discover check. King g8 now. Take a bishop on e7. Take a pawn on e5. Now we have this bishop d6, nice in between move. Hitting the bishop and preparing to play rook on f to f7. Take it. Yeah, so you can actually play d5. And then we take, actually, this would be a fork. Yeah, okay. You can't take on e5. I can't do that. e3. And then bishop e6. Hitting the bishop. We're trying to come down. This is definitely. Sorry, rook e3, bishop e6. That's one for white. Okay, let's speed up the rest of the game here. So after 96, another nice move. Decent move, rook takes a6 and a7. Oh, did I miss something? c1 check, king e2, bishop e1 check. King a1, bishop e4. So he has a... Oh, did I miss something? Oh, bishop takes. Oh, I see, okay. So play b3, bishop takes b3, king b2, on the rook, c2. Oh, king a1, rook c1 check, king b2 again. Rook c2, rook takes, bishop takes, king takes, check. I still fail to see how he was winning that. King d4, b3. See, wait to play here. Rook a6 is probably better than queen to c4 because he'll take the pawn. Probably looking forward to probably play rook a6 to defend my pawn and then threatening to win the pawn. e7. He likes rook takes e6. He takes pawn. He has a passed pawn now. Play the king over to e4 with the idea of f5 and g6 maybe. a5. King f5, g6. King f7 on rook. c6 now. He is giving check on c7. King goes to e7. We play rook d6. Once the bishop's guarding the pawn on e5, so we can play king g6 attacking this pawn. Yeah. King f7 again. And rook d7 check. King e8. Takes g7. Problem is the rook's in the way of the pawn advancing. That's the problem. King d8. Yeah, we got all these passed pawns plus the bishop is decisive. King f6. The idea is to push the e-pawn up. So if he gets check, he block. And you can check again and then play rook d6. So after the rooks trade off, you play the bishop. And this will come up when, or worst case comes to worst, I play king f7, e7. King f6, rook e4. So on the bishop now. Bishop h2. Again, the threat is e6, e7. Check and rook over, and then queen. A6 check. Oops. Rook a5, rook ace. No. Rook a6 actually, but it blocks. King c8 instead. Play king. It's yeah, e6 is happening anyway. So that's what I'm saying. You pin it, king f7 moves the pawns in the way, so you can't get any more checks. Rook a2 is not going to matter because you're playing 7. Can't play rook takes g2 because rook takes g2. There's no good. Well, I can play rook e2 now to stop the push. We can just queen, and then after he takes, you take back with the king obviously, and then his away is just easily won. This matter of techniques just to play king and rook. Plus, you have another pawn that can run up the board. Once, if this ever tries running, you just move the rook back. So you play rook d7 and down. Also, you can play bishop e5, control the queen square. So worst comes to worst, we can play f4, f5.